Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. We are here with Coach Greg White for our very special first episode of our series 4 Quarters with Greg White. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
It's tip-off time with Coach Greg White.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. So the first quarter, we are going to talk about the high school shot clock. Greg, give us your opinion on a shot clock in high school.
Well, this might take all 4 quarters. You guys know we've chatted about it. Man, it is so overdue in high school basketball. We are the only level in the world that doesn't play with a shot clock. And I'm a big fan of it. It all started for me. I was fortunate enough that I got invited to work the Players Association Top 100 camp 3 summers ago. And, top 100 players in the country. And you play by NBA rules. And, my first thought was 24 seconds, there's no time. We never had a shot clock violation. And people, the argument is, well, it turns into one-on-one basketball and blah, blah. And it just comes down to guys that just don't want it because they feel that we don't need it or it changes the strategy. And, I've debated it on Twitter multiple times with people, and, it all comes into, well, you're taking away a strategy. So, there's so many different ways to look at it. Like, there's nothing wrong with slowing the game down. We've all done it. But blatantly not trying to score, to me, that's a mockery of the game. That if that's the way you have to win, and your kids are okay with it, I think we're teaching a lot of wrong things by that. Like, it's the wrong way. It just feels wrong. I've had long possessions. I had a game last year. A guy held it for me for 1:30, and we just sat back and let him do it because we knew we were getting the ball back at the quarter. But it just feels wrong. And when you look at the rest of the world and how skilled their bigs are, that's what I always point out too. Is it's going to coach. It makes coaches teach the game to everybody. Clock runs down with 5 seconds, and your 5 has it on the elbow. He needs to be able to shoot that. He can't be turned to look for your best player to run a set or get you back in flex offense or whatever continuity you're running. So it's a big thing for me. I'm passionate about it. We can go through some pros and cons if you want on it. You guys ask for questions, or I can just kind of point out the list I have. We can go from there.
So here's a couple cons. Here's some arguments that I've seen people raise against it. Let's go from a playing standpoint. One, I've heard the argument that a shot clock will lead to more zone defenses because a team can sit in a zone, and previously, when teams have to work the ball around and use the possession longer instead of playing man, a team can just sit in a zone. And before you could hold the ball and get the team to come out of the zone. Now they can sit in their zone for 24 seconds, 30 seconds, however long the shot clock's going to be, and there's nothing that the opposing coach can do.
Right, and my argument with that is, when people talk about, well, I want to pull them out of a zone. Well, what happens if a team that is superior athletic was to spread the floor, get up 7-0 and go, Eddie Sutton a la 4 quarters and just make a mockery and make you chase them because you can't catch up to them? I think what most people don't understand is the shot clock rewards good defense. And people saying, well, I could sit back in the zone and not have to defend. You still have to defend. And let's be honest, most of the times you run a zone because you feel you can't defend them. There's people that are like Coach Bayam at Syracuse, and there were some coaches here in Arkansas, Coach Barnes, Coach Taylor, that guys that I know were great coaches that felt a zone fit, their personality and their players better. But in the end, that team still is going to take a shot, and making a team come out of a zone, to me, it means you're not skilled enough to make shots. And that goes back into teaching every aspect of the game. If the only way you can play is get steals and shoot layups, and the next thing you know is the team's going in a 2-3 zone and running all 5 back in transition to stop you from getting transition, well, you're not a better basketball team, you're a better trap team. So that's my thing on that is the shot clock, number one, rewards good defense. I shouldn't have to chase you. You should have to come to me. And and try to score. I mean, that's the whole aspect of the game. The game is it's called a scoreboard, not a stop board. And that's what we tell people.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, I mean, and it's fun. I mean, let's be honest. Like if you go back and I've talked about this, and us three haven't talked, but a basketball love story on ESPN is fantastic. I think every player should have to watch it. When they talk about why the shot clock came in, because the game got boring, and it's for the fans. And we are, I mean, right or wrong, we are an entertainment business, and it's our job, you know, to do. I mean, that's whether if you're on the high school level, your job is to put a product that people want to come watch, not just parents. I mean, we tell people in our community, you can spend $30 and watch 2 high school games, get popcorn, drinks for your family, and have a fun, friendly family environment. But nobody's going to come watch an 8-6 game because I want to show you how smart of a coach I am. So the whole thing about it, you have to come out. You know, I can do the strategy. I mean, what if my strategy was this? What if I put my 5 worst – I go get 5 kids off the football field or lacrosse team, start them every game against your 5 best players, and foul you as violently and as hard as I can inside the rules for the first 25 fouls. And that's my strategy because I want to slow down your better players. Well, you'd call me a goon. You'd call me, you know, this guy's treating the game wrong. It's a strategy and just like stalling the ball, correct?
Absolutely.
So that's my thing is like we need to play the game the right way. And it goes back again. The whole world uses it. Why aren't we?
All right, so that's the game piece of it. Now let's talk about the money piece of it. Like, what do you say to the argument? Well, it's too expensive to install shot clocks in every single high school. We don't have money for books and things. How are we supposed to pay for a shot clock?
You know, and being in Arkansas, we have a lot of rural school districts, and I get it. I grew up in a Class A school. I played there, 500 kids, kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm now at one of the largest schools in Arkansas. I know what budgets look like in public and private schools. I get that, but I also know how much money school districts spend on stuff that doesn't matter. And I'm talking about doesn't matter curriculum, you know, to the what we're here for. I mean, we're an education business, and extracurricular is part of it, but there's also things that we're spending money on there's no reason to spend on. This past weekend, just for fun, I got on and Google and looked for shot clocks. I found two different places where you could get two shot clocks for under $2,000. There's not a district on the planet that can't find a way to save $2,000. How about you don't send an assistant principal to a conference? How about you don't have 2 breakfasts for the faculty one during the year? I mean, it's raised ticket prices 50 cents. You know, it's there. That's just the argument of, well, we don't want to do it because it's an extra expense. It's a one-time expense to buy them. The other argument is, well, who do we pay to run them? We ran the shot clock last year unannounced, just picked a game and said, you know what, we're going to do it. Okayed it with the other team. I had a sophomore run it. No problem. Never had a clock issue. If somebody that knows basketball can run it, you know, you can get, I don't know if they pay people at the table, a volunteer could do it. Most teaching contracts have this little phrase we all love that says, and other duties assigned. I mean, you can find someone to do it if it, you know, and then the argument is, well, it's never hard to find somebody to run the play clock for football. And, you know, they want to say, well, they don't play as many games. Well, you don't have to, like, my clock keeper doesn't travel with me to work in my away games. I play 9 to 10 away home games. That's 9 to 10 nights. That's it. So, I mean, the financial thing is an easy argument for people, but it's not as overwhelming as it seems. It's not $1,000 a year. It's not. I mean, to me, that's just that's the easy way out, is to say, well, we can't afford it. And again, I think it's just shortchanging our kids.
What do you think's the biggest? If you had to boil it down to one pro argument in favor of the 24-second or in favor of the shot clock, what would be the biggest argument you would have in favor of it? I
think my argument is twofold. Number one, the rest of the world uses it. You're telling me a third world country in Africa can afford shot clocks, but we can't here in our country. And the second thing is we're not preparing kids for college. We don't. That's the thing is we want to have if our job, and I know we're going to talk about that later, is prepare for kids for college. Why is our game not mirror that? And that's why you see kids want to play in the summer more, because a lot of summer tournaments are running with shot clocks because it prepares them for college. And we're eliminating ourselves, the high school game, by being unwilling to change. That's the big thing for me is what keeps you from doing it. And last month I read an article from the National Federation of High Schools that basically their reason for not doing it, right or wrong, was from the suggestion of USA Basketball and the NBA and the NCAA is, well, they're not our boss. And it was literally like, I don't have to do what you're telling me to do. Most we're the only country in the world that the governing body, USA Basketball, doesn't govern every level of basketball. Coach Showalter, we had this talk in Cleveland a couple months ago. Kids in Canada grow up wanting to play for Team Canada. Kids in Germany grow up wanting to play for Team Germany. Kids in the United States grow up wanting to play in the NBA. And, when we everything changed in 2004 when we sent a bunch of pros and got beat, and USA Basketball changed their views and their standards and their values. And so now it's coming back to more where it means something to put the red, white, and blue on. But until we have people that make the rules for our high school believing that same thing, it's not going to change. Most state organizations are run by superintendents. They're not coaches making the rules. They're not officials. And the same thing with the National Federation. It's people that aren't basketball people making basketball rules.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing it's kind of amazing that the basketball experts, that their advice is not being taken seriously. When we consider implementing a shot clock, that USA Basketball and the NBA being on board, that people discount that and just say, we're not gonna do that. That's kind of an amazing thing. I want to throw out one last argument before we move on to the second quarter, and that is, people make the argument that the shot clock's going to make it harder for an underdog team to compete. So what's the counter argument to that? When people say, "Oh, my team, we're not as talented. How are we ever going to compete with a more talented team when there's a shot clock?"
It's simple. It happens every year. It's called March Madness. The better, your scheme works, your team, it's one of those that, in reality, we all love to see the underdog win in March Madness, but the better team's always going to finish in the championship and always going to win the championship. Those teams, Loyola, Chicago was amazing last year, and what they were able to do. They had nobody that had been recruited by any of the other people in the Final Four. But their scheme and their skills why they won, and they had to play with the same rules as everyone else in their shot clock. And that's the thing is, if the game is close, and I tell people this in this argument, the underdog didn't all of a sudden win it at the end of the game. They played well enough to win, and then now all of a sudden they want to stall at the end of the game. Well, what were you doing to get you in a position to win the game in the first place? Why would you change how you're playing? And that's what the thing on that is, it happens every year. Lesser talent teams win every year in the tournament. It's not supposed to happen every single game. Ask Vegas. The better team's always supposed to win, and it happens a few times where it doesn't. Style of play is an argument people have, and I'm like, you ever watch Virginia play? They do what they want when they want. Not everyone plays the same way with a shot clock, but it does dictate the rules and keeps the game in a flow that is exciting for fans, exciting for the kids, and ultimately it causes you to coach and have skill.
The first quarter is in the books.
All right, let's move on to quarter number 2. Parents and working with parents as a high school coach. Talk a little bit about how you do that. What are some best practices? And especially as we're just about to start up the high school season around the country, what does an initial parent meeting look like when you're a high school coach?
I think I learned this from one of my first ADs. The big thing in a parent meeting, and I share this with coaches when I talk to them, and we do it. You want to record that parent meeting, video it with sound on, because ultimately somebody's going to come into it one time and say, well, you said this, and you're able to say, no, I didn't, and you can pull the file up and show them. Or, well, you didn't say this. Yes, I did. I told you right here. Recording your parent meeting is a big thing. If a parent can't make it, that way they have to watch it before their child can participate. It's one of those where in today's day and age, like nothing you say, your conversation sticks with you.
When did you start doing that, Greg? When did you start videoing?
We started 2008, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, the last 10 years.
Wow.
The rule of thumb we had was to keep 3 years. That way you had all three for when the player was there. And it just really kind of, it gives some credibility because it's hard to argue. It's like stats. I mean, that you can't argue what's said on film and what you said. And, the parent might have lost the handout that you passed out, but that video is going to stay. And, I mean, Google Drive's made it incredible now. I mean, you can share it out, after you've had it. And so it really protects your staff. A coach here in Arkansas, her name's Betty Bird. She's a legend. She told me this, there's two dream jobs, a state prison because you got tough players and you never have to play on the road. and the other one is an orphanage because you have no parent problems. And, it's what you got to understand is as a coach, especially high school, junior high, you're dealing with someone's most prized possession in their child. And, I tell parents this every year. I'll say it this year in a couple weeks at our parent meeting. Every parent wants to see their child and the four best players on the floor at all times. And if they say they don't, they're lying to you because they're there to watch their child play. And the hard part, and you guys know, and we all know, is not everybody's going to get to play. And so we've gone from telling parents, the most important thing that you say is not, I love to watch you play because they may not get to play. We want you to tell your kids, I love being here with you, and that whether they played 1 minute or no minutes or 40 minutes, the parents, the kids know the parents are happy that and they don't feel like they're wasting their time. And it's a big thing on that. But I've had really good parents. I've had some issues just like all coaches. I think the main thing is transparency. A lot of coaches will make the comment, well, I'll talk about anything but playing time. I'll talk about playing time. Because recently when we started talking about that, I was like, well, what do I have to hide? And so we tell parents, I'll talk about playing time, but be prepared for what I have to say. And, and it's going to be the truth and I'm going to tell you. And, if it doesn't matter or what I've said hasn't changed their opinion, we ask them to come to practice 3 times in a row. And 3 is the magic number for coaches for this. Number 1, I don't know, unless they own the business, I don't know a lot of parents can get off work 3 days in a row. So if they're really upset about playing time, they're going to make a sacrifice. The parent is. And we've all seen it where a parent shows up one day to watch practice and the kid makes every shot he can make, and now you look like an idiot. So second day you choose a little tougher drills. If he's still hot, third day you put your best defender on him. I've had one parent in my 17 years take me up on it, and after the second day he came up and apologized and said, I'll never doubt what you tell me again. And so it's, a lot of it is the parent's ego. And, I mean, the kids know why they're not playing, but being the father of 2 teenage boys, like, kids are not very good, communicators and don't want to talk to their parents about things that are bothering them. If it's bothering the kid, we always ask the parent, did they bring this up or did you? And if the parent says, well, he hasn't said anything, well, then it's your problem. It's not his. He knows why he's not playing. This is just about your ego, and I'm not discussing it. So we get, as long as the players are wanting to communicate, we'll talk about anything with them and their parents. But in the end, I mean, there has to be a balance and a boundary set. I'm friends with I would say friendly with our parents, but we have certain rules after games, win or lose. I don't need you coming up, putting your arm around me, talking to me, because it just looks bad. You come up, put your arm around me, and someone else says, "Oh, well, that's the only reason his kid's playing." Or we get beat, and you come up complaining. It's not going to go well for either of us. And so, you got to be very transparent, set the boundaries, and main thing though is I think you just have to be truthful with everyone, and that eliminates all your problems, or most of them.
Let's flip it around, because obviously, what you just said is from the coach's perspective, looking at how you how you work with parents. Now let's flip it around and say, what advice would you have for the parent of a high school basketball player that can make their experience better, both for the parent and for their child? What are some things you would recommend to parents in their role working with their own high school student?
I deal with this the last 2 years, or I did it for 2 years, and then I'll do it for the next 3 years with Evan. At home, I'm not Coach White, and I tell parents that, like, your job is not to talk to them about basketball at home; it's to support them. There were nights when we'd get beat and I'd need to vent, but that's not my job, and it wasn't their fault we lost. And so I think the big thing is, I can't remember who wrote it. There was an article a few years ago that they interviewed a bunch of kids, and they said, "What's the worst thing you like about sports?" And they said the ride home, and because they just get badgered, and beat up over it. So the big thing is, like, I just feel like the home is not a place, like, I'll sit and watch games with Evan and Hayden, but now if they bring it up, I'll talk, but I'm not going to be the one pointing out, "Hey, you need to do this." Occasionally I'll catch myself doing it, but then I have to remind myself, "Hey, you're dad right now. You're not his coach." And that's the thing I see the most, is it puts a lot of strain on relationships, how kids never get away from the game of basketball. They get home and mom and dad want to complain because they missed shots or didn't play well, or sometimes kids just need to get away from it.
That was the halftime buzzer. Let's take a quick break.
If you're looking for a great way to spend the holidays playing some basketball, please join us at one of our Head Start basketball holiday camps on December 27th and 28th, 2018. We'll have a camp at Hoop Guru Courthouse in Hinckley, and also at St. Paschal Baylon School in Highland Heights. The Head Start basketball holiday camps will emphasize the fundamentals of basketball, with individual attention given to each camper. You'll improve your basketball skills and have a ton of fun at the Head Start basketball holiday camp. To register or get more information, please visit our website, www.headstartbasketball.com.
All right, quarter number 3. How does a high school player, or how does a high school coach help their players get to play college basketball? What are some of the things that you yourself do, or that coaches can do, to help their players get to college?
One of the things we try to do, again, it all goes back to being honest with your players and being honest about your program, is find levels that our kids can play at, and then stay in contact with those coaches. We invite coaches to practice. We attend team camps on their campus. That way they can see the kid in a game-like setting. The kid can visit. But the big thing is just, your development of players. Like, you've got to we tell our guys this: I'm not going to lie for you, because if I lie for player A and he goes and plays at this school and is horrible, I'm never sending anybody else there. And so we just tell guys, we will not lie for you. You've got to, if you're good enough, we'll help you. If you're not, we'll help you get better. But anyone playing on the next level will tell you it's really, you've got to be really good to play in college, whether it's NAIA, Division III, Division II. The comment I hear from some parents is like, well, maybe they could go JUCO. And I'm like, you realize JUCO is Division I players that didn't qualify. It's just, people don't understand how hard it is to play on the next level, and that's the part, of being transparent. The second thing is, we really stress the academic side, because your higher your GPA and ACT, the more choices you have, and
So you do their homework for them? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm trying to. Yeah. Yeah, now we've got everything's electronics, so it's hard to change grades and keep eligibility now, but somebody will turn me in on that. But that, it's really like that. The hard part is just kids don't understand like how good you are. Like when you say, "Hey, I want to play in college," and they're thinking Kansas, Kentucky, and you're like, "No, I'm talking. I think you could play in AI," and they're like,
Right.
"Oh."
Yeah.
They don't realize how good NAI players are. They don't realize how good Division II players are. And so educating parents on that is the main thing. I've been very fortunate. Every senior class I've had for the last 5 years, we've had at least one player go on the next level. And, a lot of that's relationships that I have with college coaches, but a lot of it goes back to they trust me. If they call and ask me about player Z from, my rival school, I'm going to be honest with them. And I'm also, they know that and they respect that. And if I call them and say, hey, this kid can play, they're going to take a little longer look at them. So
how do you handle, so here's a question that goes along with that. Like, obviously you have to maintain trust and credibility with the college coaches like you described, because if you don't, if every kid that you got your 12th man on the varsity, you're like, hey, Kansas, you should be recruiting this kid. Obviously your credibility doesn't go very far, but yet I'm sure that in your career you've run into a player in their family who has unrealistic expectations, despite the player's results on the court where they're a senior and they're averaging 6 points a game, but they still feel like they're a Division II player or a Division I player. So how do you handle a situation where the player, and probably more likely their family, because like you said, the kid probably deep down understands, but the family feels like the kid should be able to play at a certain level, and then they may be upset with you because you're not pushing their child to coaches at that particular level. How do you handle that situation, or have you ever had that situation happen to you?
No, I've dealt with that. I keep a file in my office. And I need to update it. I haven't updated it in years. One is a Division I roster, and I have a roster from junior college, NAIA, Division III, Division II, Division I. And I black out the school, I black out the players' names, and all it has is height, position, and height. And when I had this parent was, this kid was, they're just dead set on going here. So I handed him a piece of paper and I said, find his statistics on these sheets, and they were nowhere. And I said, so why do you think just because he wants to at his skill level that I can convince a college coach to take a look at him? A lot of it just comes down to DNA.
Right.
If you're a 5'6" white kid from Arkansas, you're not going to be the starting point guard at Kentucky. I don't care how quick your ball handling is. You're not going to get that job. And it's hard to explain that to parents. It's like, I understand they want to, but eventually, it comes down to they're not able to. And, I tell them this too, like, there's so many colleges. I can find your son a place to go. It may not be where you want to go or he wants to go, but somebody is going to be calling in July because they have a scholarship open. Now, it may be, way out west Tech somewhere that you've never heard of, and you're still going to pay about $18,000 for him to go play, but we can find him a place. But just the reality of, they think, well, my son can play here, and there's so many people in their ears. You've got your high school coach, you've got your skills coach, you've got your summer coach, you've got rankings. Everybody is saying this, and this. Well, the only person I know, and those three are out of that group, that doesn't make money or more money, or most of the time doesn't, is your high school coach. So people you just gotta, there's so many bad things out there being told to kids, like, well, I think you could play at this level, or I think you could do this, or if you transferred, you could, and it boils down that he's just not good enough, and that's the hard part, is getting parents to listen to you and understand that.
Yeah, I think it's a huge, I don't know, problem is the right word, but just I think there's a misconception about how good you have to be to play even at the lowest levels of college basketball. So if you're talking Division III basketball, you're talking NAIA basketball, a lot of people don't know or aren't familiar with those levels. Obviously, the schools aren't as well known, and from a basketball standpoint at least. And so now you get parents and players that are looking at Division III, NAIA, that's nothing. And then like we just talked with Coach Jeff DePelto earlier tonight from down in North Carolina, and he talked about the fact that he sometimes takes his team to a practice, or has some of his guys go and play with Division III players, and all of a sudden players' eyes open up and they realize how good those guys have to be. And that's one of the things that I tell parents here in Ohio when I talk to people. I'm like, you don't realize how good you have to be just to play Division III basketball, let alone forget about getting a scholarship to play basketball, how good you have to be. And to your point, a lot of times it's just the physical tools that a Division I player has. They may not be a typical Division I player might not be more skilled than a Division III player. You might have a 6'8", 240 guy that gets a Division I scholarship has an equal level of skill as the 6'3", 190-pound guy who's playing Division III. But it's just the physical tools that guy has allows him to go and play at the Division I level. I just think people they just don't understand what it takes to play at the college level. And I think that as a high school coach, that's got to be tremendously challenging because, again, you want to do the best for your kids that play on your team. I mean, we'd all love to be able to help them get a scholarship, be able to play college basketball, be able to go to the school of their choice. And yet at the same time, people have to realize that, if you're going to coach at Bentonville West for the next 20 years and you're going to have relationships with these college coaches, if you're telling them, every time they call, this kid's great, this kid's great, this kid's great, eventually they're going to come on to you and you're going to be the boy who cried wolf, and you have no credibility, and then you can't help anyone.
Correct. And the big thing we tell our parents and players is coaches want winners. They want to recruit winners. So let's do what it takes to help our team win, and you fill that role and help, and then I'm able to say, hey, this guy's got tremendous upside. He's a team player, works hard, versus, hey, he scored 35 a game for us and we went 9-19. I mean, that just, it's hard to sell that. Like, oh, okay, maybe he's the reason you went 9-19. Maybe if he'd have scored, 20 and, and moved the ball around. But it's our game has turned so selfish, and that's the hard part for us and the high school level is getting guys, back into it's not just about you getting points and your future. Like it's about your present right now. Like the worst thing I've seen is guys that were selfish high school players that think it's all I've got to get myself to college. They get to college, they don't pan out, and then they spend the rest of their time wishing they'd had a different experience in high school.
All right, listeners, it's time for the fourth quarter.
All right, quarter number 4, team captains. First of all, yes or no, do you have team captains?
I think all your teams have leaders, and I don't pick captains. I wish this was mine because I think it's brilliant. I stole it from Coach Calipari that I don't know who my team captain is until the first game of the year, because when the official walks over and goes, Coach, who's your captain? I say, ask them. And the kids, whoever they send to the circle, that's who the kids want to go. I've seen it backfire on too many coaches where they have the secret ballot election and, Johnny didn't become team captain, so he's upset. And especially if I coach girls, there's no way I'd do it. That.
No, God.
Well, they deal with enough as it is. I mean, you got homecoming ballots. Why add something else to it?
Right. Right.
And you don't want to rotate it because, so I just tell them, the kids will tell you who our captain is, because I could pick someone. Doesn't mean that's who the team's going to listen to as their leader. And in some situations, it's almost a defiance. If coach picks this kid as the captain and that kid is a horrible teammate, got a bad attitude, but he's a senior, he's a superintendent's kid or whatever. There's issues with that too. So I'm not a big fan of it. my senior year, I remember I was never named a captain, but I went to the circle every time to talk, and me and my best friend I played with, and we kind of, that was one of the things that it just sort of happened. And I read that article about Coach Calipari, and I was like, I love this. It took one less thing off my plate as a coach, is picking the captain and naming the captain, and so I think you got to give some things. We talked about who's responsible for things. Like I don't believe in seniority. I think if a senior wants more, they give more. I sweep my floor. I do our team's laundry. I do, our staff does as well, but it's a coach doing the laundry. It's a coach doing this. So we expect our seniors to get the ball racked, clean the weight room, because two things, it gives them ownership. If I can complain about a dirty locker room if I'm picking it up, and so they bind, hey, let's keep this clean. Let's do this. But the twofold of that is I never have to reteach it. The juniors watch it, and now they're excited that they get to be, the ones that have some ownership in the program. And so it's kind of a rite of passage, if you will.
So even if you don't have formal captains, as those leaders sort of emerge naturally through who the kids select, you do have, I don't know what the right word is, roles, you do have tasks, you do have things that are expectations for the kids who are the leaders of your program.
Yeah, I believe that. And, and it's, we had in 2014, I was an assistant coach at Springdale with Brad Stamps. One of our most vocal and respected leaders played maybe 4 minutes a game, if that meant that much, but his voice meant something in the locker room. And, we would have never selected him as a captain, because, the officials want somebody they can talk to on the floor. And, he was our speaking captain and may not be on the floor, but he was respected by the players, and that's who they chose. They wanted him, to be in there. And so we try to make it by class. This class is responsible for this class is responsible for that. But again, like, your point guard's you're always gonna talk more to them because the ball's in their hand the most. Last year we had a sophomore point guard that started with 4 seniors, and to validate his place a lot, I would only talk to him sometimes in practice to make him, more comfortable communicating, and also to teach those other 4, like, I trust this guy, you better trust him. So there's different ways about it. I looked at naming a captain as a way to eliminate a possible situation. Captain gets hurt, captain gets in trouble in class. Am I going to strip him of his C on his jersey? So it kind of, but it's weird.
What percentage of coaches out there do you think still, name, go through the formal process of naming a captain? Like, if you had to put a number on it, honestly, I have no idea what that would be, but
I would think it's high.
Yeah,
I'd say
too,
80.
But I don't. Yeah.
I mean, I would think it's pretty high. And I, at my last school, like, I had a parent ask me, what can I put down? He's a captain on this scholarship, and I was like, I don't care. I mean, sure.
If you think it'll help, right? If you think it'll help.
Yeah, I mean, put down he's a 2-time captain, whatever you want to do. I mean, it's just one of those things that, it's a Facebook brag. I mean, hey, I'm feeling blessed because Johnny was named captain today.
Right. Yeah. I think to your point, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's just one of those things. Like, I just see so much negative out of it, because if I name you my captain, well, I mean, what keeps, everyone else on the team from starting to be jealous of you? Like, why is he getting that? Or like, what if I name my son Evan a captain as a sophomore this year? And my reasoning is, well, I'm going to have him for 3 years, and so I don't have to rename a captain. But it's not going to be looked at like that. It's going to be looked at like, oh, well, he's paying favoritism, and so
yeah, it's funny.
I just let my kids pick the leader.
I coached middle school basketball, and I think it was last year. It was my 3rd year coaching, like, in the district that I currently coach in, and not once had they ever asked for a captain to meet at mid-court. And then some random game, these officials asked for captains, and I'm like, I've never had a captain, and I didn't even know what to do. And I was like, I looked at the other coach, and I'm like, do I just name someone or do? Well, one of the girls just overheard the ref ask for captain. She's like, can I just do it? And I was like, that's fine, whatever. And it was the only time I've ever had it happen in my 4 years coaching. Like, and I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was caught off guard because I didn't even expect it. It was very random.
To Greg's point, I think
so.
It happens naturally. I think it does. I think it happens naturally. I think the kids, like you said, Greg, I think the kids know. They know who it is, and they know who they're looking to as the person that they respect, the person that they look to for those leadership roles far more than we as adults do. Because again, those kids are together in situations and in ways where we're not there. And I think they figure it out, and they know.
So two quick captain thoughts for you, and one's a story. And you guys have all seen it. They call the captains in, so most time it might be one of your better players. Well, they stand there for 3 minutes and don't get shots up to get loose. And so there's a Hall of Fame coach in Arkansas. His name's Brad Blue, and I mean, outstanding coach. He's a wonderful athletic director at a school in our area at Farmington. So he's in a state tournament, and referees are long-winded. So this next game, he sends a student, a player on his team. She's probably the 15th out of a 15-person roster, and she's bilingual. And he tells her, when they say any questions, you just start speaking in Spanish. So, she's never going to play a minute. She's standing there, and the girls have any questions for me, and she just rambles off in her native language. And the other coach, he's making a mockery, he got all mad, and Brad laughed about it. But, that's my other thing too is, why can't we do that? And most time in our place, they referee the girls' game and the boys' game. But, you just took my best player out of his rhythm, to come talk to him about keep your shirt tucked in and on the first one we're playing. We've heard it all before.
Right.
So I've never been in one of those meetings where they say something and I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's something new.
Yeah. But
that's funny. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I think, again, if you're a coach out there, I think your leaders are going to emerge naturally if you allow that to happen. And that's not to say that, naming a captain is always all bad, because there could be some positive to it. But I think ultimately the kids know, and if you let it happen naturally, I think you're probably going to be better off from a leadership standpoint, and making things work the way that you want it to work. So, Greg, anything else on any of our 4 topics on our 4 quarters that you want to hit before we wrap the episode up?
No, I think we touched on enough on there, and I don't want to go over the shot clock.
That's game, man.
This is a lot of fun for our first episode of 4 quarters. For our audience out there, the plan is to bring Greg on whenever we feel like we've built up 4 topics for us to discuss. He's going to bring a tremendous amount of insight on different things because he's in the trenches every day working hard with his kids in Bentonville, and we're excited to have him a part of the Hoopheads podcast and part of the family that we're trying to develop here. And Greg, we appreciate you jumping on, and to everyone out there, we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Hoopheads podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.